Chicago's West Side, a billion-dollar dope turf, America's deadliest neighborhood, and home to the infamous Black Souls street organization.
Diamond rings, Dom Perignon, and long limousines. Jack Bobo, according to his indictment last month, is one of the leaders of the Black Souls street gang. The Black Souls and Jack Bobo sold $50,000 worth of heroin on Chicago streets every day.
The Black Souls leader, along with 5 other managers, the leaders of a gang that the Cook County State's Attorney says wreaked havoc and terror in Chicago's West Garfield Park neighborhood,
including committing an execution-style murder in broad daylight of a neighborhood man who was brave enough to report them.
North Lawndale is the birthplace of the Vice Lords, and just north is Garfield Park, where the Black Souls formed and fought off the Vice Lords' attempts to put them under their umbrella back in the 60s. They're founded by a guy named King Pee Wee. 1983, several Black Souls got convicted of taking out a Vice Lord chief. But after that, they managed to stay low on the police radar, and they didn't get back in the newspapers till the late 80s and early 90s.
Tomorrow at 10, we'll report on the man known as Jack Bobo on the street. Officials charge he made a bundle selling heroin smuggled into Chicago through a Nigerian connection to Thailand.
In Chicago, they try to blame all the violence on the gangs. West side of Chicago neighborhoods of Garfield Park and North Lawndale, which during the pandemic reached homicide rates pretty much almost unheard of for any precinct in the U.S.
Police say 2 people jumped out of that car and opened fire. This area is very well known for the drug trade.
Jack Bobo and others are accused of operating an open-air market selling that China White heroin at Walnut and Holman on Chicago's west side.
Deals done right at the car window, money exchanging hands over and over. Business on the street is thriving on Madison near Pulaski in West Garfield Park.
They're not afraid of the police.
Come not just from the city, but the suburbs. Consider this raid on the west side just 2 months ago.
Where are you from, Dick?
Spring. Who buys China White?
Everybody. All types of races, all types of classes, suburban housewives, college students.
Prosecutors said the New Life Black Souls controlled a 6 square block area, pumping coke and blows around the corner of West Monroe and Pulaski. Back in 2012, when a guy that supposedly had been working as a witness for the Chicago police caused some 40 cal slugs to the back of his head in front of the church's chicken on South Drake Avenue. His name was Claude Snulligan. Mr. Snulligan supposedly was calling the police because of dealing activity in front of his house. Black Souls supposedly beat him up. He went to the police and started working as an informant. Black Souls supposedly offered him $3,000 not to come to court, but he didn't want it. But the story doesn't quite make sense, because he supposedly went back to the neighborhood to borrow some money from somebody to buy his girlfriend a Sweetest Day present, even though it's women and buy men gifts on Sweetest Day, and the Black Souls supposedly seen him there and took him out. This is per the chief informant in the case, a guy named Alex Williams, and he got a very sweet deal. In addition to 40 grand in cash, got another 50 grand in rent and services. They relocated him downstate, and he got caught by his FBI handlers, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 times, selling D while he was a protected witness for the Black Souls, and he beat up a cop. Despite all this, he only got 3 years. But he had been in the Cook County Jail back in 1994 with the alleged so-called chief of the New Life Black Souls, Cornell Dawson. So he testified that Black Souls would let him come sell on their turf and saw them kill Claude Snulligan and commit other crimes. Alex Williams started telling this tale when he was facing 60 years in prison.
State's Attorney Kim Fox says the Black Souls protected their territory by murdering, kidnapping, beating, and intimidating witnesses. Fox says they controlled heroin and cocaine sales for 15 years.
Cornell Dawson received a total of 5 life sentences in the state of Illinois and a consecutive 40 years for conspiracy. Dawson's number 2, Teron Odom, 3 life terms plus 40. Other co-defendants received similarly stiff sentences, really only separated by how many lives they got, by how many homicides the jury determined they were responsible for. Antoine Davis, 3 lives plus 40. Ulysses Polk, 3 lives plus 40. Clifton Lemon, 2 lives plus 40. Devon Spears, the alleged trigger man on Claude Snulligan, he got 2 lives plus 40. As you can see, Mr. Spears has a tattoo of 290 Interstate on his body. That's the highway that goes from the west side suburbs into the west side of the Shire, and in the downtown is nicknamed the Heroin Highway. And that's what all the violence on the west side is about. Well, not all of it, but a lot of it.
The street corner open air drug market is the pipeline to shootings and murders in Chicago.
One of the homicides included in their 2013 indictment was of a new breed rapper named Johnny Boy the Prince, who supposedly had just got signed to Atlantic. Some people said on the street people thought they were going to take his advance money from him, $75,000. Not sure what the truth of that is, but Cornell Dawson was picked up on a wiretap. Sounded like he was sarcastically referring to some of the black souls, the ones who took Johnny Boy the Prince out, actually attending his funeral and getting memorials and saying bye to his family. As you can see by all these succeeding indictments over the years and the decades, nobody learns their lesson. Because there's so much money at stake. Even the informant, Alex Williams, in the case, was getting paid. Not only did they relocate him to downstate Illinois, he got $40,000 in cash, another $50,000 in rent vouchers and other stuff to testify against the black souls. But yet, when Cornell Dawson was taken into custody, the so-called chief of the black souls, he only had a couple grand and he was living in an apartment he shared with his mother, at least according to his lawyer, and there was no big sum of money ever seized associated with the black souls. Jack Bobo, despite them having a wiretap on his phone for many months, there was one $50,000 payment to the Nigerians discussed. Now remember in the news it said he was making 50 grand a day. Nigerians did get caught with about 400 grams once, which is a lot, but that's one time. Supposedly their operation should have been running through that, every couple days. Jack Bobo, just like Cornell Dawson, he had a little more money than Chief Dawson. He had like $15,000 in cash in his house and $50,000 in jewelry. I mean, that's something, but again, if you're supposedly making $50,000 a day, Chicago police, FBI, show me the money. Where's it at? Interesting to note. There's been lots of huge corruption cases. I talked about one with my story on the Vice Lord's indictment around LaBar Span that was connected to the Flores twins case. Lots of corruption cases with the Chicago police. Dating all the way back to 1972, there was 5 black Chicago police detectives linked to 6 homicides of black dealers. And it was supposedly a war between the cops protecting each other's dealers, which is reminiscent of what the white federal agents at the Federal Bureau of Narcotics were doing in New York in the late 1960s. And a little quick history factoid, you can go watch my documentary Cold War Heroin Heat, but Richard Nixon shut down the FBN, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which preceded the DEA because it was too corrupt. Richard Nixon had to shut it down because it was too corrupt. There were 27 documented by Congress homicides of Federal Bureau of Narcotics agents on each other's informants in New York in the mid to late 1960s. Wouldn't be surprised if something like that was going on in Chicago as well, on and off. Not saying everything is that. Speaking of mysterious homicides in the black souls, in 1992, right before they started an investigation on Jack Bobo, there was a murder on like the 1200, or it was a quadruple homicide on the 1200 block of Kildare. And the 1300 block of Kildare is where they said Jack Bobo had his headquarters, and they wiretapped a phone, and this was supposedly the center of operations for the New Life Black Souls dope ring. Interesting that it's right down the street from this quadruple homicide, supposedly committed by a black soul, who, I think Rodney Williams was his name, who also was implicated in some other homicides, who in later years got exonerated. And in fact, there was an allegation in his exoneration process that one of the investigating homicide detectives in the case committed one of the homicides a block down from where the Black Souls or Jack Bobo got a case put on him in which he ended up with 30 years. And the Nigerians got 30 years. Jack Bobo's brother got 20 years. All Jack Bobo was convicted of, I mean, I read his appeal unless I missed something, was, I think, conspiracy to distribute 15 to 100 grams each. I mean, that's a crime. But 30 years, he was acquitted of the 100 or the 400 to 900 count. One of the Nigerians was convicted there and got 30 years. Controlled buys they made from the Black Souls there in the early 90s. All the ones I read were 2 tinfoil packets, $20, $30, $50. Nigerians did have a half a brick seized. But like I said, all Jack Bobo was convicted of was 15 to 100 grams. His so-called headquarters was on the next block where this quadruple homicide associated with his other Black Soul was said to be associated with a bunch of homicides. And in that guy's exoneration, there was allegations about a police officer made. Now, I'm not going to say the officer's name because I don't think anything ever came of it. I don't want to be libelous. And I'm not saying it's true, but just food for thought. And believe me, I know from working on all these cases and from now knowing police, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and people that work in the media, and in fact, as someone who has a platform, different people try to use me to promote their own propaganda of different things at different times. So, if the police wanted to make someone appear to be a drug kingpin, all you gotta do is you call up your contact down at the local news and say, hey, you want an exciting story? You got these videotapes Jack Bobo and his crew made the mistake of making. But all they're doing, they rented a limo, they got some jewelry on it, some black leather outfits. I mean, it's a long way from proving they were making $50,000 a day. Now, I'm not saying that's what really happened. I'm just saying a lot of shady stuff goes on with the Chicago police and DOPE. And when the project towers were up, mostly on the south side, but some on the west, a lot of the DOP activity was concentrated there, and the police corruption with that is well documented. And then now on the west side, it's just interesting that these new breeds, Black Souls, they're all getting indicted, RICO'd over and over. The homicides don't stop. The dope dealing don't stop. Where's all the money? Got to be hundreds of thousands a day going through Garfield Park in North Lawndale. Where's it at? They're not seizing millions and millions in warehouses or bank accounts when they get these gangs who supposedly control everything. I would guess that whoever the real powers would be just drop off a bag, or, whether they're Nigerians, Italians, or whoever, and the Black Souls, well, whoever it is that's dealing makes their couple bucks, and they're all in and out. And whoever's really behind it, or really is up the food chain, they're not being taken out because they're being protected. So these New Life Black Souls were supposedly making $11 million a year. Again, Cornell Dawson was caught with almost no money. There was no big seizure of money. Now, the homicides in the case are pretty rough. Like I said, Johnny Boy the Prince. We had the Claude Snelligan, the informant, or not informant, the witness and the victim of being assaulted. Though the description of how he met his demise seems a little funny, and it comes from that informant who was getting paid, who was a dope dealing gang member himself. And then there was another disturbing murder where the guy that got on the stand, who a Black Soul who flipped and said he was told to dig a hole, and then he saw the police and he ran, and when he came back to the hole, there was a body in it. But he doesn't know, he didn't put the body there. some other black souls did, the ones he testified against. Is it true? Maybe. It's all mighty convenient, though.
What this law allowed was for us to look at the enterprise that this gang was operating under.
In fact, things got even worse in Garfield Park.
On an October evening at the Tokyo Hotel just off Michigan Avenue, police arrested a Nigerian woman who had swallowed 106 condoms that were wrapped with electrical tape and filled with almost 3/4 of a
West
kilo of
Africans
pure heroin.
coming to Thailand to score drugs and bring them on into the United States.
But that's what we have.
That's exactly what we have. Yeah.
Remy Baker, according to federal officials and Chicago police, is high on the ladder of international Nigerian drug runners and a direct link to Jack Bobo and the Black Souls of Chicago.
Wayne Jack Bobo Edwards and his Nigerian heroin plugs were put away for 30 years, but that obviously didn't stop the suburbanites and others from pulling up in the same neighborhood and spending their money.
Open-air drug markets operating in Chicago neighborhoods like this one in Garfield Park.
Yeah, it's every day.
Every day?
Every day.
I'll tell you, what Jack Bobo got convicted of is pretty light for a 30-year sentence. The worst crime he was personally found guilty of was conspiring to possess 15 grams or more, but less than 100 grams of H with intent to deliver. He was acquitted of conspiracy to possess 400 to 900 grams. For extra credit homework, check out my story on the president of Nigeria. I interviewed a Nigerian journalist who did the research. It pretty conclusively, to me, shows that the current president of Nigeria, and remember, Jack Bobo had Nigerians in his case, well, they were suppliers. The current president of Nigeria was certainly laundering money for Nigerian traffickers in the early 90s in Chicago and Gary, Indiana. Now he's the president of Nigeria. Jack Bobo did 30 years, the Nigerian couriers did 30 years. Well, they got 30 years, they probably served 25. That guy went back to Nigeria. The people he was working for were never in America. They were Nigerian all the time. So the Nigerians, anyone that's from a foreign country and is in the U.S. with the bag of dope, they just a send-off person. They not a kingpin. And anyone that's standing outside or anyone that's even dealing with people that stand outside selling dope, they're not kingpins, they're just shift supervisors, like the assistant manager at a Wendy's. So as you can see, the arrest of Jack Bobo and the Black Souls back in the mid-90s did nothing to stop the Black Souls from still selling dope in Garfield Park 30 years later.
The Black Souls wreaked havoc and terror in Chicago's West Garfield Park neighborhood. Fox says they controlled heroin and cocaine sales for 15 years.
Today's verdict is a victory for that neighborhood, which deserves safety and peace that the Black Souls robbed them of for years.